we're going to start with just an interesting article that one of our colleagues found. I'm going to put it through in a poll, but it's related indirectly to the topic that we're going to be discussing today in activating the digital workforce. This deals with how we internet, I think was the term that they used. And so it just deals with a couple different interesting facts about trends that have been happening ever since we all went on a nationwide lockdown. So I'm going to start this poll. There are no grades being given, so feel free to just answer it. I'm going to give 30 seconds to answer them. And then as a heads up, the last question just deals with what industry sector you're from. That's just so we can get an idea of who we've got in the room here. All right, we'll give it 5 more seconds.
Give them some time. I think people are figuring out how to use it and giving them their choice.
Well, we weren't all Zoom experts prior to COVID. I find that hard to believe.
Good.
All right. Looks like we got most people voted. I don't want to use up too much of our 45 minutes though, so we'll go ahead and end it right here. So let me share the results so everyone can see. Interestingly, apparently a lot of people have a lot. So this is the first one, deals with the Facebook's daily website traffic that's separate from the app. I believe the correct answer was 27%, but I would have also thought 40% just because of the amount of time people have on their hands. But I thought that was quite an interesting one, that a lot of people have shifted to not just using Facebook on their cell phones, but also outside of that, logging into it on their computer. I guess it makes sense while we're all locked at home. The second one was Zoom, and I don't think there's going to be any surprise here, but 8 million was the correct answer. So they went from 2 million to 8 million over the course of 1 month. I thought that was a pretty astounding number.
I would have thought more.
You would have thought more, yeah. I mean, I think that one was the number of individual sessions that they have on a per day basis, which is, yeah, it's pretty astounding. And then ESPN, they dropped 40% in viewership. 70% sounds a little more accurate, just because I don't know about anybody else, but I haven't watched ESPN in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, because they're not exactly
no sports.
There's no sports. There's all the classic
rerun
games. Right, exactly.
Yeah, I'm a big sports fan, and I haven't even looked at it one time in 3 weeks.
Exactly, because I don't know how many
The
people
biggest
go to.
thing they're promoting is head-to-head competition on a video game. You have sports playing each other on a video game, and that's exactly ESPN can muster right now.
It's interesting, right? But yeah, so this is pretty interesting facts, but we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm going to come back to that last one, the industry sector, in 1 second. So give me 1 second on that. But thank you everybody for joining us. You know, we really appreciate the opportunity to do these sessions with the Venture Cafe. We've been hosting sessions with the Venture Cafe, I think, going on about 2 years now, going on 3 years. And it's something that we really hold at Deloitte near and dear to our hearts, and we're really excited to be doing one during this time. So the one that we're going to be presenting today is on activating the digital workforce. You know, like most people, we all were thrust into this environment of completely virtual work, completely remotely working. And I think if you would have asked people 3 months ago, if you individually, if you and your team or your organization were able to operate efficiently and effectively in a completely virtual environment, some of us might have had slightly different answers than we may have today. I think, you know, we're all to some extent proficient now in working completely remotely, completely independently of the people around us. And so what we're going to go through today is just an overview of some of the tips and tricks and some of the ideas that we have around how you can successfully operate in this type of environment. Let me go ahead and slip to the next slide. So, we're going to get to these tips that we have on this page right here on how to create successful virtual meetings. But one thing that we did want to point out right in the beginning is this Zoom meeting that we're on right now is a perfect example of how we can practice what we preach. We're going to talk the talk, but we also want to walk the walk while we're going through this, right? So making sure that we're collaborative, making sure that we're inclusive of everyone in the audience is something that we would like the audience to keep us honest in. One thing that I would ask right up front is that if you do plan on talking, then by all means, if you have questions along the way, feel free to interrupt John. He's not going to be thrown off his game by someone interrupting to ask a question. But I would ask, if you're not talking, then please be on mute, just so we can eliminate as much background noise as possible. But without further ado, John, feel free to introduce yourself and take it from here.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and I'll add to it. Feel free to interrupt me, or you can use the chat function and ask questions there. So you can use either one of those, and that's perfectly fine with me. I don't mind being interrupted, but you do have other less intrusive options if you do so care to do so. All right, thanks. If you can move to the next slide there, Kevin. Yeah, folks, really pleased to see all of you. My name is John Forsyth. I'm a managing director in Deloitte. I mostly work with government clients. I've been working there in the St. Louis market for around 7 years, even though I do live here in the DC metropolitan area. I'm a managing director in our human capital practice. And so, even though much of what we're going to be talking about tonight is the advent of technology and how that's enabling us to work better, we look at this as this move towards the digital environment as the future of work. We don't look at this solely as just the use of technology, but this is a mindset shift. And that's why this is coming from the human capital partner. So without further ado, we'll go through the agenda. We'll talk through, you can go back to the agenda for a second there, Kevin. Yeah, we'll go through the agenda of, what's the 3 phases we're all going to be going through as we recover from this COVID and come up with this new normal. We'll talk about what we mean by the future of work and why it's happening now. It's not the future of work, it's the now of work. And because the many are smarter than the few and the few are smarter than the one, what we're going to be doing is for both individual performers, for teams, for leaders, we're going to come up with what you think are some of the best tips. We've got some of our own thoughts, but I think hearing from you first is going to be critical for that. And then we'll wrap up with, if you're going to run a virtual meeting, how do you keep people engaged? How do you keep the folks that are on there as involved as possible and not just make it boring? And hopefully we achieve that today for you. And then throughout, as Kevin mentioned, please feel free to ask questions. Next slide, Kevin. So when you think about what we've been going through, and first and foremost, I should lead with, I truly hope all of you are safe. This has not impacted my family. I don't know anyone that has had this disease yet or has died from it, but it's happening, and we can't lose sight of that. We've been in lockdown here in Virginia since March 13th, and the governor said that we'll be on lockdown until at least June 10th. It's quite a ways away. But what we look at from a Deloitte perspective is there's 3 phases. The respond phase over here on the left, that is organizations that might have traditionally been on-premise organizations responding to make sure that there's a continuity of operations. All right. The priorities during that is enabling telework, making sure that people have the technology, the policy, and the direction on how to keep their work going. Second, crisis communication. Make sure people are informed of what's happening, how it's affecting their workspace, what their expectations are, and make sure that there's clarity in terms of their policies of how to work on-premise or virtually. And then we also talk about the prioritization of work. Something I talk about with my government clients quite a bit is there work right now that's not getting done? Is anyone complaining that it's not getting done? If no, then don't do it anymore. right? There is so much work that can be not done because it's no longer value added. And so this is a great opportunity to really objectively look at that work. The other side of that question is, are there critical leadership decisions that need to be made? But because the right person isn't there to compile a report for leadership review, those leadership decisions are less effective. Guess what? That is a perfect opportunity for artificial intelligence and automation so that you are not relying on this. Because it's not just this COVID instance that we're responding to. We're responding to the next one. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, folks, but once we get out of lockdown, it's going to happen again, right? Until we have a fully thought out and validated vaccine, we're going to have to go into lockdown again, probably several times over the next several years, right? So being able to respond and maintain continuity of operations, no matter what your organization, is critical. Like I said, this is a challenge. I work mostly with government organizations, but we also work with high-tech startups, Silicon Valley, big name Silicon Valley. Guess what? They're struggling with it too. I knew that was going to happen. I talked with a colleague just yesterday. They work with a high-tech startup in Silicon Valley. They're struggling with this move toward a virtual environment. It's not just government organizations, it's everyone. After the response phase, what we've got to realize is, first and foremost, we are never going to go back to how work was done on March 13th. Never, right? The expectation that work can only be done on location and that's it. I think what was happening here through COVID is we are destroying a lot of those myths. We're busting those myths and questioning all those assumptions. So when we start thinking about recovering and making this part of our daily work going forward, maybe not to the same extreme that we're at right now, but some hybrid of there's on-premise work, there's virtual work, and it depends on the work, it depends on your workforce, and it depends on the workplaces that you have. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But when we start recovering, getting past respond with high-performing teams and telework enablement, start looking at how can you make sure you can deliver training. The stuff that was usually done in classrooms, how can you do that in virtual environments? Performance management, getting away from assuming that people are only productive if you can see them and they're charging a certain number of hours or hitting into some certain number of hours on their time expense. Get away from hours and focus on outcomes or outputs. I like saying, back before the 20th century, people who were hunters or farmers weren't paid per hour, right? This is a relatively new convention. People were paid on the outputs they brought to marketplace. Start thinking about that from your employees too. All right, the digitalization of work. This is how do you use AI and automation for advanced decision-making? How do you use collaboration to be able to share information more broadly? How do you use those technologies to allow, and this is a key element to this, how do we get work to be more humanized? There's so much work out there that is inhuman. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But how do you get people to have a great experience so that they're focusing on the work that is more human and you can automate the stuff that is automatable? Once you get past the recover phase and figure out what your work environment should be, what we want people to be focusing on is what we call elevating the human experience. What people want from their workplace, it's simple. We've done a tremendous amount of research of thousands of organizations, and what it comes down to is people want 6 things. They want to do meaningful work and see the meaningful contribution over their hands. They want managers who support, sponsor, coach, and develop them. They want a positive work environment, and this is critical to what we're facing right now, where they can shape their work around their life as opposed to having to shape their life around their work. Meaning, if you had to be in the office from 7:30 in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, then everything else around life had to be shaped around that. What we're seeing now is people work on different biorhythms, they have different responsibilities, and be able to work when they want to work when they want to work to live, not live to work. Exactly, Karen. That's exactly what people are looking for. So that's positive work environment. The 4th thing they want is diverse career opportunities. That career path where I'm just waiting for the person ahead of me to retire or die, that's gone. Diverse career opportunities. They want trust in leadership. They want to be able to have visibility in top leadership and have connections, no matter whether I'm a director or a junior resource. And they want to be able to work in an organization that's collaborative across all its typically siloed organizations. So getting to that, elevating the human experience and embracing the future of work and how what we're seeing right now, will always be a part of what we're going to be doing going forward. Next slide, Kevin. So when we think about the future of work, we put it into 3 phases: the workforce, and the workplace. Very simply, when I talk about work, there is so much work that can be automated. We describe it as the dirty, dangerous, and dull. And for most, white collar work, it's the dull work that they start automating. Any kind of data entry, transaction processing, compiling of reports, those things are so easily automatable now that they're no longer human, right? Start thinking about what are the human work that your people want to be doing. They want to innovate. They want to serve at a higher level of customers. They want to come up with new ideas. They want to collaborate. Those are the things that are more human. They want to do problem solving and analysis, right? If you can remove from their plate the stuff that's automatable, give to the robots or automation that which is automatable, then what's left is truly human. And it really does change the nature of how engaged people are. A big driver of this, much of what we talk about under work is this infusion of digital technology, and that is truly a differentiator. The scope of change during this digital revolution dwarfs what we went through in the e-commerce internet phase. And another main driver of this is talent expectations, right? I just talked about those things that talent really does want. And it's not the typical, I come into office, check in and check out and do the same thing every single day. That's not what humans want anymore, right? They want their workplace to be a place that engages their higher level thinking, engages their values, engages them as individuals, right? And that really thinking about those talent expectations in terms of meaningful work, supportive environment, positive work environment, and diverse career opportunities. And another thing to add there is the continuous learning and relearning. Right? People aren't going to be stuck into one narrow skill set anymore. They want to continuously learn new things, and giving them opportunities to do so. That's the expectations. And if you can't provide that to your employees, you're not going to win the war for top talent. When we think of the workplace, I think what COVID has showed us is the workplace is less defined than it was a month ago. All right. This generation wants to be able to work where they want to work, when they want to work, and how they want to work. And hopefully something that everyone's going through right now is paying attention to your own biorhythms. For example, I find myself most productive from 7:30 in the morning until around 11:30 or so. Then I need a break. And what I've done is I have blocked off my calendar to the middle part of the day. I spend some time with my family. I walk the dogs, take a break, maybe watch some TV, get away, take a walk. Those things I just need to be able to do. I find them productive for a few more hours in the afternoon. I make dinner with my family, and then I'm productive for a little bit more after dinner. But there's something we describe for millennials, the 10 to 2 employee. And what I mean by that is, and this is hypothetical, but the 10 to 2 employee has their workouts in the morning. They go into the office from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and they do those things that require on-premise collaboration as a team. But they've got their their community or their service or their aging parents or their children. They take care of in the afternoons. They make dinner. They do Netflix in the early evening, catch up on whatever binge watching they're doing. But then again, they're productive from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. doing independent work. That's one example. But paying attention to when you're most productive, that is what the future of work entails for you, because technology and your expectations, what you're seeing out of this is that's how you want things run. You don't want to be able to work on someone else's time. You want to work when you want to work. Okay, next slide. All right, and then making work portable across time and space. And so my challenge to everyone here is to take a look at your own work. And prior to this past month, we just assumed it all had to be done together at a location. What this pandemic has done for us is made us question all that, allowed us to question, where does the work need to occur? And when we look at it is it on premise or anywhere? Is it independent or collaborative? So an example of something that has to be done on premise together would be like a surgeon, a team of surgeons doing surgery. Right now, we haven't figured out a way to virtualize that yet. They need to be at a hospital in a safe protected, antiseptic environment. On-premise independent work. You know, we do a lot of work with the intelligence community. An intelligence analyst reading and correlating classified information, that's probably something that has to be done in a secure facility. I mentioned the intelligence community. One of my colleague teams doing human capital work within the intelligence community, they always worked in a SCIF on a secure facility. They always done that. But guess what? Post-COVID, they figured out, you know what? Not all of this work has to be done in a secure facility. Some of it can be done virtually. They questioned those basic assumptions and split the work. Because right now, putting someone in a co-location is going to put them in danger potentially. So dividing that work out and being critical of those assumptions that have always been, we've always done it this way, so that was the assumption. No, classified information had to be done in a secure facility. Non-classified information that had previously been done by a SCIF could be done virtually. They questioned those assumptions, right? How we work together anywhere, you know, think about how do you bring out a release of a new product worldwide. People from around the globe aren't coming together to come up with those assumptions. They're using Zoom or something to be able to come up with collaboration together. And, you know, remote independent work, where we work anywhere independently. A freelance creative designer could be doing his work or her work anywhere. So my suggestion for you is look at this 2 by 2. Take a look at all the work that you have being done. Question basic assumptions that you've had in the past and figure out how much work can be done, has to be done on premise, how much work can be done anywhere, and really objectively look at that going forward. Okay. I see a lot of things coming up in chat. Kevin, any questions coming up that you want me to check in on and answer now?
No, so there's Bill made a couple points about how the government is a bit restrictive. They're in the time card mentality, and I think he has a pretty good point there that it's, you know, who's going to be the ones that are historically slowest to get to where we need to be, and that's going to be the government. But and then also he mentioned the overclassification of materials. Obviously, that's a pretty big problem as well. But you know, to his point of this could help change that, I think it's already starting to, right? To what John said, where we were aware of our client who didn't think anything could be done outside of that SCIF, and come to find out they put together a plan where most of their work can be done outside of the SCIF without violating any laws. And, you know, it's an interesting thing when you're put into that scenario and you're forced to make it work. You find out different avenues that you didn't quite consider before this situation.
Right. And hopefully what people are realizing is, you know, this is changing the world forever. You know, again, first and foremost, hope people are safe, but this move towards a digital environment has been pushing for the past almost a decade. Yet this right now is going to accelerate that. And we'll never go back to how work was done before, because a lot of those, it's always been done this way, assumptions are going to be questioned. People realize there are more options in terms of how I want to be able to live my life and how I want to spend my work. Now, I do hope that we do go back to something like normal and do have a chance to be physically together again, but it's never going to be the same level that we had prior to this whole event. Okay.
All right. So the next part that we're going to go through, we've got a couple annotations that we're going to use. So we're going to put a question up on the screen, and then via the Zoom capability for annotations, people in the audience, feel free to type up your own personal response. It's going to be completely anonymous, and so your name is not going to pop up next to your answer. Let's keep it PG. I probably don't need to say that, but we'll put it out there anyway. So, you know, we're going to go through, if you don't know how to do the annotation, I believe on every participant's screen, you should be able to see at the black bar at the top of your screen, there should be a more, the ... And I believe within that you click annotation. All right.
Okay.
So we will.
Great, thanks. And we're going to go through this. And what we're going to be doing is asking questions. We've got, I think, 3 or 4 categories here. One about as an individual worker. What are some tips that you would suggest? And again, this goes back to my philosophy that the many are smarter than the few, and the few are smarter than the one. So I'm sure you have more thoughts I could come up with here. But as individual workers, what are some tips that you've seen that works well for being productive as an individual? We'll talk next about how teams can be productive, and we'll talk next about how the role of managers and supervisors can be most effective. Are there ways to type as opposed to handwriting?
Yeah, I believe there's a text field that you can use as opposed to handwriting it.
There you go.
But we love the effort.
Yeah. Yeah, this is good. Clear goals, incorporating exercise, and yeah. As these are coming up, I'll react to a couple of them. Yeah, incorporating exercise into the daily. I have had a chance, and this is, you know, I'm a guy in my early 50s. I have had a workout, whether it's walking or playing golf or doing something. I've had a workout every single day, and that wasn't the case before. A good, comfortable desk, yes, absolutely. Nice, comfortable seat. Establishing a routine, and I picked up on this before. Establish a routine. Be clear on your own expectations, and very importantly, clarify those expectations for others. I was going to tell this story later, but I have a colleague of mine, and she's another partner in the firm. She's got 2 young children, probably I think ages 7 and 9, and she has blocked off her entire morning, so she's conducting homeschooling for them. That's fantastic because she's told, hey, listen, I am off the grid, you know, from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. or 11:30 a.m. every day. And she's productive, and her husband's taking care of the kids, and she's productive from noon until 8 o'clock every night. She is very productive. But she cleared off her calendar, and she told everyone exactly what she was doing and why she was doing it. So establishing those routines and being clear about it is so important. Frequent breaks, yeah, getting away. Having a room. I was lucky enough that I just finished redoing my office in my room just before this all happened. So got a new desk, got a new chair. Yeah, having that room that's set up and distinct from everything else, because whether it's dogs, kids, spouses, friends, or anything else could be a distraction, it's easy to let that and turn it off. You know, make sure that you don't. It's very easy for us to be hyper connected throughout this, and the brain needs to be able to be connected and be disconnected. Moments of levity, absolutely. I have a colleague he has sent to a text chain of all of us. There's like 20 of us on the text chain, and he sends a new song of the day. And this morning was Carly Rae Jepsen, the Call Me Maybe. It has been an earworm in my head all day long. But it's fun. It's a great way to stay connected. Okay, good. A lot of good ideas. And like I said, you guys have more than we do. So a lot of good things about do not eat in front of the computer. Okay.
That's a big one.
Yep. A lot of really good ideas that you guys are sharing here.
All right. So we're going to move on to the next slide. So we'll cut off the annotations. And give me one sec. There we go.
Yep. Yeah, I think you hit a lot of them. You know, I'll just say, you know, dedicate time in your day for informal social interactions. I will say that Deloitte is very much a work hard, play hard environment, and the idea of a happy hour has become quite popular. So those informal discussions where, you know, don't underestimate the importance of camaraderie. People desire that, and if they're not getting it through this Zoom environment as easily, proactively seek out those chances to insert that levity. I talked about clarifying expectations, and don't be afraid to power down based on your situations. And every individual is going to have different needs, your own physical needs, your own biorhythms and circadian rhythms, whether you have dependents like adults, elderly adults or children. You have to understand that your unique timetable might be, it's not going to be everyone at 0800 to 1600. It's going to be dependent on those individuals. So understanding those circadian rhythms and clarifying that with everyone else and making sure that your team is aware of your schedule, that's a critical step. Seeking feedback. It's so hard in this environment to understand whether you're doing well or not doing well. So proactively go out to your manager and seek that feedback from them. Under general tips, there's going to be a range of individuals in terms of their tech savviness. if you find yourself on the far positive end of being tech savvy, reach down to lend a helping hand and coach and teach someone else who might not be at the same place you are, because everyone's going to have and this isn't just age related. Different individuals have different appreciation and embrace of technology. But if you see colleagues that don't have as easy a time with it as you, or don't understand all the tools that Zoom offers, or has a tough time getting online, call them, give them a chat, walk them through it. You will be better off because they can be more productive and they'll appreciate your input. Kevin, anything else to add there?
Nope, I think we're all good.
Super. All right. So we talked about individuals. Now, how about your best advice on how teams can best collaborate? What's a high-performing team look like in this virtual environment? What are your best things you've seen so far in terms of teams really being effective? Give us a few minutes to answer those questions. Keep meetings short and to the point. I have moved away from thinking that the smallest time of a meeting could be 30 minutes. I've gone to 15-minute meetings. Be smart, be quick, be gone. Video chat, not PowerPoint. Yeah, when I think of technology tools, I think in this environment, obviously in person, there's an effectiveness of communication that you get from in-person communications. In the absence of that, video is better than phone. Phone is better than text. Text is better than email. And the reason for that is that most communications happens non-verbally. The tone, the body language that's conveyed while conveying a point is so much more digestible by humans than the words itself. Words can be misinterpreted, but words combined with verbal tone, combined with body language, really does send a different message. Check-in meetings, avoid micromanaging. Yeah, that is something we see. We'll talk about this with managers. Managers and supervisors are really struggling more than individual performers are, because managers are taken out of their element. They're used to seeing people there and feel like they can only be productive if I can say that, excuse me. So trust and power, in short, good collaboration portal, manage tasks, good. Clear guidance and check in regularly, right? Going back to my comment before, instead of just assuming productivity is numbers of hours charged, assuming productivity is the achievement of an outcome. We've done assessment, and people who work 60 hours a week are no more productive than people that work 40 to 45 hours a week. They are just busier, right? And they're probably being busy just to keep up pretenses and keep visualization of their managers. So getting away from that mindset of, yeah, I have to be busy all the time, and figuring out what does productive mean for you. It's a deliverable, it's a product. Okay. Zoom meetings like this one, your team white space, yeah. Understanding different schedules, empathy, yeah. A lot of these things, really strong teams understand their different parts, their complementary parts, and by communicate, you really can keep people on track with what they're doing respectively. Kevin, go to the next slide. Oh, clear that. And next slide. Yeah, I think you guys hit a lot of great points there. Something I would talk about in expectations is purpose. Simon Sinek is a great public speaker and writer. He starts with why, right? Why do we, not instead of just what we're doing, but why are we doing it? And that's a question that we should ask all of our teams. If you're working on any kind of project, always ask, why are we doing this? What's the outcome we're trying to drive towards, as opposed to just what we're doing? Communication, making sure that there's multiple different formats for communication, that there's regular communication, without that communication being micromanaging. It's more enabling, right? Regular check-ins. The leader's role is to make sure that people are staying productive, staying connected, and staying engaged. And something we should say is mental health is so critical. Just like I said before, there's a spectrum of people in terms of their tech savviness. There's going to be a spectrum of people in terms of how resilient they are in this environment. You never know what people are going through. They might have people around them that are going through the disease. They might be stressed by this kind of environment. They could be a hyper extrovert where this kind of isolation is crippling to them. Understanding that people are going to be different places and being there to check on them is critical as members of a team. Okay, so I think we hit on most of those. And Kevin, clarify for me, our intent is to make sure that all these slides, as much as we can share, I'll be going out to these teams afterwards. That was a head nod from Kevin.
That was a head nod, yeah. Yes.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, I want to be respectful of Venture Café time because we got to get out of here at 5:45. But
got it. All right. So next slide, going for supervising. Okay. So as a supervisor and manager of others, we talked about individual performers. We talked about teams and how they work together. What are some good tips that you've seen for effective managing or leading of others, whether you're at the individual level, team level, department level, or even organizational level? What are some of the tips you've seen for a supervisor working in this virtual environment? Fewer tips for managers. Sense of humor, good.
Can't go wrong with that.
I'm sure Pete wishes that I had a sense of humor. Weekly check-ins, regular check-ins, transparency, yep. Empathy, empathy, Kavitha, very, very true. Understanding that, you know, we've moved from what I call moving from the golden rule to the platinum rule. You know, the golden rule is do unto others as you'd have done unto you. Managers have to get past that and go to the platinum rule, which is do unto others as they'd have done unto them, which means that different individuals are going to want different things. You're going to be at different paces. And a supervisor's role is really situational leadership. How I might lead one person might be very different from how I lead another. And how you get to the point of understanding is asking, you know, what do you as an employee want? How can I help you achieve your goals in your career? You know, and having that sense of empathy that one kind of leadership style is not going to work for an entire team or even an organization, right? That's what supervisors have to adapt to. Right. Team lunches give trust. Yeah, don't wait for it to be earned. Good, I love this. Mentor, yeah, continue to mentor. Proactively seeking out mentoring opportunities. I have found myself, even though we're virtual, I've found nearly every single day having mentoring discussions with my teams or my coachees. Okay, good. A lot of great input here. All right, different ways of thinking. Very good. Okay, Kevin, you want to, I think we're winding down with that. It's really good stuff there. A couple of tips we would add here in addition to in this virtual environment, you know, oftentimes supervisors, you know, everything else being equal, usually older than others, might have a tough time adapting to this. But guess what? You as leaders need to be a role model for this. Now, our CEO at Deloitte is a guy named Dan Helfrich, and he is a Zoom master. He does a weekly thing for all 85,000, 100,000 individuals that work in Deloitte Consulting. And he is authentic. He's got his kids in the background. He wears a funny hat to correspond to the day. He's authentic and he's credible, and he does a fantastic job using Zoom as a role model. So if he can do it, anyone else can do it. Performance, making sure that people get away from the idea that you need to have face time, like going back to that 60-hour a week just because the boss was there, I'm there, right? Getting away towards what real outcome in performance is, and providing feedback, both positive feedback and critical feedback. And being very clear too, a leader's role in my experience is telling stories. Hey, you know, your colleague so-and-so did this fantastic thing over here virtually. I didn't think we could do this work virtually, and they figured out a way to do it. Let me share with you what they've done, and maybe you can adapt some of those things too. Telling those stories, because oftentimes the leader is the only one that sees it. Measuring success, continuous performance management, making sure you're proactive with that feedback, and then managing expectations, understanding that different times are going to be, people are going to be more or less productive, and like I said before, different levels of technology awareness. Okay, we only have a couple minutes left, so I do want to wrap this up, Kevin. And our last tip here is, and hopefully we demonstrated, if not all of these, many of these. If you're running a virtual environment, seek input. We did polling, we did the annotations, we allowed for the chats. We want you to encourage the interaction. It's not just a single voice. And what I saw from the annotation sides especially is that collection is much more powerful than a single presenter. So thank you very much for your input. Be interactive, be collaborative, and be present. Like I said, the use of video is much more effective. You can see body language, you know who's talking, you understand what's working and what's not working. So there's a lot of things you can do there through these virtual sessions to get the most out of your teams and of your organizations. It's not just Zoom, but it could be other tools as well. Kevin, anything else to add from this slide that you want to make sure we hit upon?
No, I think we covered everything. I think that's the last one as well, right? Oh, no. We had open-ended questions if we wanted to do any of these.
Sure.
Yeah. We'll see if
I know we only have like a minute or two left here, Kevin, but
yeah, and I guess before we get into these, one last thing. So we have a slide at the end that has our contact information. So if anybody does want to contact us and talk further about this stuff, then we're happy to share the emails.
There you go.